Hello everybody, Ben Coley here, Zen of Ben. Okay, today is March the 22nd and we're going to do another show, continuation. I want, first of all, I want to thank everyone who called in and helped, and I want to thank the DEA, I want to thank my doctor, I want to thank Senator Nelson's office, and all of the Americans who were instrumental in making phone calls on behalf of my wife in tremendous pain with, as you know, with her broken ribs that she has, not being able to fill her prescription. Well, she was able to fill it the other day thanks to you guys. Let me take this off. It's getting warm in here. That said, this is, let me show you. Let's talk about funny stuff. So anyway, so we were able to fill the prescription, and Whistler's drugstore. Isn't that funny? Whistler's drugstore. It wasn't filled at Whistler's drugstore, but that was taken at Universal Studios, and it's just kind of silly. There's just a picture from my past. I was in the mountains and I saw a goat up in the mountains, and I wasn't hunting or anything. I just saw that. It's just I was going through some pictures the other day and I saw that. I thought I'd show it to you. How many times do you get to see a goat up in the high mountains? Let's see. I always like to start out with a funny story, so you get to know me and talk about my bachelor days and some of the funny things I did and some of the funny things that happened. And I have a very clean driving record, fortunately, thanks to following the speed limit and in general being a careful driver and being careful with not running red lights or any kinds of moving infractions. And so by keeping my driving record clean, obviously able to have a better insurance rate than everybody else, than most people. But one day, going back decades, I'm talking about when I was maybe, I don't know, 27, 28 years old, and I had the insurance office thing going full speed, and I told you that I insured an awful lot of people, thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And every time I would insure somebody, I would write my signature on the bottom of their insurance identification card. So if they were to get stopped by the police, they would see Benjamin Cola, agent, on the bottom of their card. So I guess the cops kind of, maybe they didn't know my face, but they knew my name. Well, anyway, I had purchased a brand new, every couple of years I got a new car. I just purchased a brand new, back in the day, a 280 ZX Nissan with a turbocharger in it, leather interior. It was just a two-seat car with a turbocharger, and it was a super fast, powerful Nissan turbocharged car. And it was so cool. The dashboard lit up red. It even had a G meter in there to tell you how many G forces you were sustaining as you accelerated or made a turn. And it was just a beautiful car. It was black, and the paint job was so beautiful. It just glittered. I mean, it was made in Japan, but I mean, it was. I endeavored to buy U.S. cars, but in any case, this was a Japanese car, and I drove it once, and I fell in love with it, and decided to buy it. So one day, my buddy comes over from Allentown area, and he said we had tuxes on, and we were getting ready to go out to pick up chicks. And he said, hey, Ben, so we're in my new Z car, and he was kind of a wild guy, and he said, how fast will this car go? Well, I didn't know. I mean, I didn't speed or anything. I followed the speed limit. I always set my cruise control because I didn't want to inch up faster until the next thing I know I was going too fast. So we're going down this highway called 295 in Cherry Hill. They were riding along, and he said, step on it. There was nobody on the road, and the road was like 4 lanes wide. And it was a road built for a 70-mile-an-hour speed limit, but it had a 55-mile-an-hour zone, because back in the day, they had a rule that said all roads had to be 55 miles an hour. So, which was bullshit because the road was supposed to have a 70-mile-an-hour speed limit. It was built for that, and it was wide enough for that. It was safe, and there was no traffic, and it was brand new. So he talked me into, God forbid, stepping on it. So I stepped on it, and I got it up to about 80 or 90. He said, "Oh, it'll go faster than that." And I said, "Ted, please, no, let's slow down." And he said, "Lay in on it." Well, I had a radar detector in my car, just in case there was a radar trap ahead or something. Oh, we always had that thing on. It kind of helped me not get a ticket in these 25-mile-an-hour zones, because sometimes in a 25 zone you'd easily get up to 35 miles an hour, so I was always careful. And the police were real picky. I mean, if you were 5 miles an hour over in a 25 zone, they'd give you a ticket. And I didn't have any tickets, so I didn't want any tickets, so I had a radar detector, not because I had trouble on my record, but because I wanted to keep it clean. And I didn't want to get nailed in one of these 30-mile-an-hour speed limits or 20-mile-an-hour speed zones. So I had the thing on, and I felt like I was protected. And he goaded me on, and he said, "Go for it, go for it, go for it." And being a pilot and a Type A personality, and the Z car with the power that it had, and I just thought, well, what the heck, you know, I'm on 295. How, you know, I can't have an accident. There's nothing here to hit. And so I laid in on it. I got it up to about 24 miles an hour, so said the cop who caught us. And I was just coming up over the crest of a slight hill, just a slight incline, and as I came over the crest of the hill, the radar detector went dee-dee-dee-dee-dee, and by then I was had passed several police cars that were right over the crest of the hill that you couldn't see. And I looked at my rear view mirror. By the time I looked at my rear view mirror, they were a mile back, and I could see the red lights on, and they were turning around in the mud. They were in the middle, in the grassy middle where it was muddy, and they were turning around slowly. And by the time the cop car got out on the highway, I wasn't a mile down the road. I was 2 miles down the road. And I thought to myself, oh gosh, I took my foot off the gas, and I thought, well, I'll just get off the next exit and blend in. I knew the next exit had an awful lot of traffic, and I would just pull off into the nearest gas station or something. And there were millions of gas stations and hotels and restaurants, and I would just pull off and get lost in traffic and park somewhere and roll out of the car and get out and park. But as I approached the next intersection, and I didn't want to drive crazy or anything because I didn't want to get a ticket for reckless. I figured worst case scenario, I'm going to get a ticket for speeding. And I thought that I had a good lawyer. I figured maybe he could, you know, I could pay the ticket for speeding and that would be it. So I didn't do anything reckless. I just started to slow down. I pulled off the next exit where there was a lot of traffic, and I got on. As I was going around the ramp, there was a Volkswagen Beetle bug. You know, it was Volkswagen Bug, and it was going blink, 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 blink around the. Now the cop car could see me pulling off, but he was miles back because I passed him. I was going so fast. By the time he accelerated, I was already miles ahead, but he could still see me. And I was going blink. So I slammed on the brake, and I thought, if I pass this Volkswagen on the ramp, he'll say reckless driving, and you passed somebody on the ramp at a high rate of speed. So I just slammed on the brake and figured, well, he's so far back that I'll stay behind the Volkswagen. Doink, 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 doink. It was going about 20 miles an hour up the ramp. But that slowed me down enough that they were able to, a couple of more cop cars came zooming along this Highway 73. They blocked off the top of the ramp. And because I didn't pass the Volkswagen and zip up the ramp, they were able to call ahead and block off the upper part of the ramp before I could. And they stopped the Volkswagen, and then they let the Volkswagen go, and then they went like this to me, and they stopped me, and so I stopped. I obeyed, and then next thing I know, the cop car that clocked me finally caught up to me on the ramp, pulled in behind me, with the police officer in front of me going like this, and I was basically caught. So, and I was wearing, you know, I was going to a black tie affair, so I was wearing a tux. My buddy was wearing a tux. We were all dressed up, and I guess they checked me out real fast and figured I wasn't a danger. So the other police cars that had blocked off the highway, he told them to leave, and they left. And then he he said to me, he said, go up the ramp and pull into the first parking lot there at the Holiday Inn or whatever. There was a hotel there with a big parking lot. He said, and I'll talk to you there. So I did. I followed his instructions, and I pulled off and went into the Holiday Inn and parked in that parking lot there. And he got out of the car, and he came up and he said, give me your license and registration and insurance card. So I gave it to him. And he said, oh, you're all dressed up, you know, where are you going? I said, we're going out to dinner and out dancing and pick up chicks, you know, we're just bachelors. And he said, oh, okay, cool. You know. And he went back to his car and sat in his car, and sat in his car. And just sat there for half an hour, sat in his car. And I was getting a little nervous. Wondering what in the world he was sitting in his car so long for. I figured he'd write me a ticket, or I figured maybe he's writing me 10 tickets, I don't know. But I knew I was going awful fast. Meanwhile, my friend, who had a hell of a sense of humor, said, who goaded me on, I never would have done this if he wasn't in the car, said to me, boy, Ben, what's the penalty for going 124 miles an hour in New Jersey? And I said, oh, I don't know. I said, it's probably not good. So just then the cop came back to the car, police officer came back to the car, and he handed me back my car. He said, you're Ben Cole, the insurance guy, aren't you? And I said, yes, I am. And he said, how fast do you think you were going? And I said, oh, maybe 64. Now the speed limit was 55. And I was doing well over 120. And he said, I clocked you at 124, he said. Now I wrote you a ticket for 64 miles an hour. I'm cutting you a break. He said, and so you guys have a nice night. And by the way, he said, how fast do you think this? He said, how fast do you think you were going again? And I said, oh, about 64, I think I was going. He said, don't tell me that. And I said, well, I don't think the car could go 120 miles an hour. Now I shouldn't have said that because he already wrote me a ticket for 64. And it was a 55 zone, so I was only 9 miles an hour over the limit according to the ticket. And so he said, well, you know, your best bet is just to shut up and get on your way, Ben. He said, you know, because I've heard your name and I see your insurance ID cards every day, he said, and you have a clean driving record and nothing on your record. He said, I'm cutting you a break, so you have a nice night and go out and pick up some chicks and have a nice time and just pay your fine, you know. So he, oh, and by the way, he said, and don't tell me this car can't go 120 some miles an hour because my brother-in-law has one. My brother-in-law has one, he said, and I know it could go that fast. So anyway, you guys have a nice night. You're free to go. And he let me go. So I took my ticket for, it was written up on, let's say, 64 miles an hour in a 55 zone. And I thought to myself, I'm going to have to turn this over to my lawyer, and I'm going to fight the ticket. I'm going to fight the ticket. I mean, the police officer cut me a hell of a break, and I'm going to fight the ticket. You know, so and believe me, I never drive like that, ever. I mean, my stupid friend, if he wasn't with me, I never in a million years would have done that. But I don't know, maybe I would have. But anyway. Bottom line is, on Monday morning, I called my lawyer, and he said, oh, we can fight the ticket, I can beat that. What'd you get, a 64 and a 55? I said, yeah, I don't know, I-295. He said, oh, I could fight it, at the very least, I could take up the court's time and whatever. So, and I told him how fast I was really going. I told him the whole story. So we got to court like about 2 months later, and the police officer asked to speak to my attorney, and he was furious that I hired an attorney. The police officer was really mad. And so they went into the conference room prior to me going into the courtroom to talk to my lawyer, and my lawyer came out about 10 minutes later, and the cop his face was red. He kind of gave me the evil eye, and my lawyer looked at me and he said, Ben, you didn't tell me you were going 124 miles an hour. And I said, yes, I did. And he said, no, you didn't. And he said, Ben, you know, you can't. I said, well, he said the police officer threatened to tell the judge how fast you were really going if you don't just pay the ticket. And I said, well, he can't now because it's past 30 days. And my lawyer said, yes, he can. He can change his mind and tell the court how fast you were really going. And the judge, if the judge believes him, you're going to get a ticket for. I said, well, look, I'm not worried about the ticket. I just don't want any points on my record. And my lawyer said, oh, don't worry about the point. I can plea away the points and agree to pay the ticket, and you won't have any points on your record. So that's what it is. So I paid the fine, and I never got the points or anything. So that's what happened. So anyway, about a month or two later, I'm flying my Mooney airplane, and I was by myself, and I had nothing to do that afternoon, so I decided to just go for an airplane ride, which I used to fly every day, one way or another, or almost every day. And so my airport where I kept my Mooney airplane was only about 20 miles from where this whole thing happened. But I rarely flew in the direction of where this radar nest was. And I don't know what made me fly that way that day. I mean, I just took off, and then after I got in the air, I decided which way to fly. And I was just up for a joyride, frankly. So I climbed up to like 10,000 feet, 2 miles high in the sky, flying around. And I looked down, and I saw I-295 down there, and damned if I didn't see the police cars right in the same place as where they were sitting when I got clocked a couple of months earlier. So I said, oh, okay, I'm going to, and listen, this is all in fun, all in jest, nobody to get hurt, just fun. I thought to myself, okay, well, let me show them what speed really is. And I thought, what I'll do is I'll fly down, and I'll line myself up with the highway, and I'll fly down the highway in my Mooney, which had retractable landing gear and variable pitch prop and ram air, and I mean, that thing was really fast. So I thought, I'll fly down, and if I could fly low enough that they can read me with the automobile radar. So the radar beam going down the road, I figured, you know, I could come over the crest of the hill in the airplane, flying parallel with traffic, you know, low, and they'll read me on the radar, and then think that the car is going 300 miles an hour, wherever fast I could get the plane up to. Being a test pilot, and all part-time test pilot, I didn't tell you about that, but I like to test planes to the limits. So I decided to see how fast the plane could go and show the police. So, and I was kind of hoping the same officer was down there because I wanted to show him how fast I could really go. And like I said, it was all in fun. Nobody did get hurt or anything. I didn't mean any trouble. It was in fun. So I came flying out of the clear blue sky, and I dove down with plenty of advance room so that I could gather my speed before I ran parallel with the road, and put my propeller up to full increase and full throttle in a dive, and then I leveled out over the road, and I flew past the radar nest at full throttle, wide open, with my landing gear up, and I was doing maybe 300 when I went by, maybe 250 to 300, I guess. And I wasn't really looking at the airspeed because I didn't want to hurt anybody, so I was watching where I was going. And so I went down. I went past the police radar nest at like 250, maybe 300 in my airplane. I'm like, there you go, sucker. You want to see speed? There's speed. And then I just went, and, up into the sky, and I made sure I stayed parallel with the road so they couldn't read my tail number. And I have one of those older planes with the small tail numbers. It'd be hard to see. But I just stayed parallel with the road, so I mean, there's no way they could read who I was. And then I just flew away. But I thought that was kind of funny. And I knew that they probably went home saying, I clocked a car today at 300 miles an hour. And I don't know if their radar could go up to 300, but they must have clocked me at 250 or 300. And I don't know who they blamed it on, but I'm sure they heard me fly over, because God forbid, I mean, the exhaust pipe is this big around with flames shooting out of it, so I'm sure it was extremely loud, and so they must have known it was an airplane. I sure hope they didn't give anybody in an automobile a ticket for going 300 miles an hour, But I know they must have been able to read me because I was unusually low when I went by. Anyway, to make a long story short, I kind of disappeared into the sky, never heard anything about it after that, but I felt like, oh, I got back at them, you know. Then, a few months later, my friend calls me up and he said, my stockbroker friend, he said, the one who had the girl that went to the beach with us with the high heel shoes. He was my stockbroker, by the way, which I'll tell you about how I lost all my money when I sold the agency using him. But anyway, make a long story short, he said, Ben, you know, and we were always interested in picking up girls because we were young bachelors, so he said, Ben, I know where all the chicks are. And I said, what do you mean you know where all the chicks are? He said, well, where I went to college, he said, there were a lot of chicks in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. I said, Williamsport, Pennsylvania? He said, yeah. He said, there are lots of girls that are single in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. He said, but it's a long way. I said, oh, I could fly us there on the airplane in about an hour. And he said, well, Ben, if you could get us to Williamsport, Pennsylvania, I know that we could pick up some girlfriends. So I'm like, okay, let's go to Williamsport, Pennsylvania. We'll stay overnight at a hotel. We'll see if we can find a girlfriend. Oh, boy. So we fly to Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and the place was like deserted. And he said, Ben, there's something wrong. Something really wrong. He said, Williamsport must have gone bankrupt or something. He said, because when I was in college, he said, Williamsport was a jumping, happening place. He said, Williamsport, there's nobody here. I mean, the clubs were all empty. They normally had people, and the place was just empty. There was no traffic, no cars. It just looked like the population was cut in half or 1/3 or something. There wasn't anybody there. So we went back to the hotel room and watched TV and decided you were just going to come home. The next day was a Sunday. So we're flying home. And to fly home from Williamsport, Pennsylvania, you had to fly over Allentown, where my friend lives, who goaded me into speeding in the car. And he lived, every time I went to visit him, I used to fly to Allentown. But I was way past Allentown. So I'm coming back, but oddly enough, I had to fly over Allentown, the Allentown ARS, Air Traffic Radar Service Area. So I'm flying back. And I had filed a flight plan, so everybody knew, you know, where I was going and who I was and everything. So I'm flying back, and all of a sudden, as I'm approaching Allentown, and my flight plan was to fly over Allentown, you know, above the traffic that was landing. You know, you fly over it, so you're high enough over it so you don't bother anybody coming and landing and taking off. But you fly over it as a waypoint, and that becomes a waypoint for you to fly to Philly, because I was flying to Northeast Philly to land. That was my termination point. Well, I had to drop Joe off, and then I was going to fly on to Berlin, where I was going to land. So as I approached Allentown, I was maybe 20 miles short of Allentown, and the air traffic controller, who had been controlling me and making sure that nobody got in my way or make sure I didn't get in anybody else's way, and I was squawking out a frequency that they had assigned me based on my flight plan and so forth, and they knew I was going to Northeast Philly. They said, calling Moody 7447 Victor, your air traffic, your radar service is terminated. And I'm like, say what? And they said, we're terminating your radar service. They said, and we'll advise you in just a moment. So they said, squawk, you know, VHF and keep going. So I had to turn my squawk back to standard VHF and flying along. And next thing you know, about 20 seconds later, they said, Moody, they called me back and they said, you have two A-10 Warthogs flying, and they're coming, they're under you, he said, and they're flying very low, and they're going to give you a show or something, and do you have the traffic in sight? Now remember, they had terminated my traffic control because they didn't want to be responsible if there was a mid-air collision, so apparently they knew these A-10s were going to play games with me. Now maybe this was retribution for the police thing that happened, you know, or maybe the Navy, because the Navy was always bugging me to join, and I told them, I said, I can't join because I have the Allstate, the independent insurance office going. I said, look, if I didn't have anything going, I would join. But they wanted me to join, and they were bugging me all the time to join. So now, oh God, here comes the National Guard. Now they're after me. And then they called me back and they said, 47 Victor, do you have the traffic in sight? This should be under your left wing. And I glance off to the left side, and I'm like, negative. And I'm looking around, and I honestly didn't see these A-10, and the A-10 Warthogs are the ones with the big cannons in the front that shoot the, they shoot tanks. They're really not air-to-air fighters, but they can be. They could certainly blow me out of the sky. And so I glanced down, and the air traffic control said, there are two of them, you must see them. And I said, no, I didn't see them, but they're painted green. Now, I was over the forest, so they blended in with the green forest floor. And I'm flying along at like, a mile high or 7,500 feet or something, and I couldn't see them flying along. And the air traffic control said, well, they're down low. They're right at like 500 feet or 1,000 feet. They're flying very low. And I'm looking, and I don't see it. And then they said again, do you have the traffic in sight, 47 Victor? I said, no, negative on that. So I just continued on my way, figuring, well, what am I supposed to do? I mean, I can't, I'm not going to change my heading just because these fighter jets are down there. And then the air traffic control said, they're off your left wing now, and they're in a 45-degree climb, and they're coming straight at you. Do you have them in sight now? So I looked out my left, and I'm negative, I don't see them. And they said, well, please advise when you see the traffic. So I'm watching, and I'm like, Joe. And my friend Joe, who said all the girls were going to be in Williamsport, was next to me. And he had my my airport book with all the transponder frequencies and the radio frequencies of every airport. And he had my charts and books and a pencil. And I said, Joe, I said, we're going to have a flyby by two A-10 Warthogs. And he said, oh my God. And he was wearing the Dick Clark headsets, and I was wearing the headset. We had intercom communications, and so he could hear everything that was being said. And he was so scared that he put his head down between his legs, and he jammed the pencil that I gave him right into my chart. And he made a hole in my chart, and he was going like this, and he wouldn't look out the window. I said, Joe, look out the window. I said, keep an eye out. We're going to have a close flyby by two A-10s. They're going to give a demo flyby. And they called me back, and they said, do you have the traffic in sight? And just then I said, yes, I have the traffic in sight. And I swear to you, I saw two A-10s. They were hiding under my left wing, coming up as they climbed. That's why I didn't see them. They were hiding under my left wing, and they were in a position where they were getting ready to climb, and they knew I couldn't see them from where I was, but the wing was blocking the pilot's view of them. So they were using their tactical knowledge of the fact that I couldn't see through my wing, and I didn't have a Cessna where the wing was above me, the wing was below me. And so I from above the wing, I couldn't see below the wing, and they came up from below my wing. Frankly, if it was an air-to-air battle, they could have blown me away, and I had never seen them coming. But air traffic control said they were coming. Still couldn't have done anything about it. I could have changed my direction, but I thought that would have caused a mid-air collision. So I chose to just keep flying straight and level, figuring if anything bad happens, it's on them, because they were going obviously faster than me, flying an A-10, and I'm only in a Mooney. So anyway, they when I saw them, I could see their faces. I mean, that's how close they were, and I could remember seeing the fuselages of the A-10, like this, and the engines were like this. I mean, the engines were bigger than the fuselage, or as big as the fuselage, up like this and above the fuselage, and you could see the fuselage and the cannon down there, and you could see the face of the pilot, and I could see the mustache coming out from the side of the, I mean, you could see the face of the pilot, and he was wearing a mask, but you could see the mustache coming out. I mean, I was looking right into his glasses. And up he was coming, and one went, and my friend Joe was absolutely paralyzed with fear, pushing the pencil, and one went over me like this, and one went under me, and it was just like, and I was in the middle, and the back blast when they climbed on a 45-degree angle, and I was going straight, and one went over me, one went under me like this, and with me in the middle. and the backblast when they went past shook my plane. You could even smell the fumes from the diesel. And then air traffic controls, and then they went down to my right, and air traffic said, "Did you see that?" And I said, "Yes, I sure did." They said, "Oh, they're coming around. They're turning around now. They're going to be coming up from behind you now." And they went around, and then they passed me, one above me, one below me. They circled around to my right, and then they just went, one above me, one below me, going at like twice as fast as I was going, and then they went straight down to the deck off to my right and headed south towards Maryland, probably where they came from, because they hung around down in Maryland all the time. I used to go sailing down there all the time. I'd see them all the time. And so then as soon as they left, air traffic control called me back, and they said, 7-4 Victor, your air traffic, your radar service is reinstated, squawk, la la, and they put my code back in, and then they said proceed to destination. And then they kind of laughed about it. They said, what'd you think of that? And I said, oh, it was quite a demonstration. They said, yeah, it was, wasn't it? And I said, yeah, it was pretty cool. But I guess they got me back, I guess, for buzzing the police. Or they wanted me to join. I mean, they wanted me to join up, and I guess they were. And I got buzzed by the Navy too, by the way, out over the ocean by Tomcats, F-14s. They just like hassling me. But I mean, it was all in fun. Nobody got hurt, and they always told you they were coming, so you always got a close-up view. But my God, you know, to get close enough to I mean, they could have ripped my wing off with the backblast from those engines were huge, and I'm flying in a little civilian 4-seat plane. But I guess they knew a Mooney was a rugged plane. That's a very, very rugged plane. If it were a Cessna, they probably wouldn't have done it, but they knew they couldn't tear the wings off of a Mooney without. Could have rammed me, I suppose, and they'd have flown away okay, and I'd have just tumbled out of the sky. But they were just busting my chops, you know. They really wanted me to sign up. They used to come to my house, like I said, all the time, but I said no. Anyway, being a pilot, I was just thinking about that. It's a funny story. I was wondering today about this flight MH-17 that crashed over the Ukraine. You know, what in the world? You know, did it get shot down by a surface-to-air Buk missile? The American corporate media would have you believe the Russians shot it down with the bad guys on the ground shot it down with a Russian-made Buk missile, and I don't know. I'm not believing it. I mean, the reason I don't believe it is I've got enough ears to the ground in the Ukraine that I kind of know what's going on. And President Poroshenko, if you remember, 3 weeks prior to the MH-17 being shot down by whoever, said that he had a nasty surprise. If you remember, he said that he had a nasty surprise for the Russian insurgents, the people that wanted to join Russia. He said, I have a nasty surprise set up for you. And for the 3 weeks prior to that happening, he was saying, I have a nasty surprise lined up for those people. And, he never did say what the nasty surprise was. And then the plane coming down from the north would normally have flown closer to Italy in its path to through the area, transiting through, but instead it flew more to the east. It was directed by Kiev to fly more to the east, which put it over the war zone, where the plane normally would have flown closer to the west, west of Kiev, and closer to over the Mediterranean and closer to Italy as it flew southwards. But they altered the course, which was strange. So why would Kiev, who was responsible for it, I mean, the air traffic controller was responsible for where that plane flies, and they directed the MH-17. As a pilot, I can tell you, the air traffic controllers are responsible for directing where the plane flies. The pilot files a pilot plan, a flight plan, and then the air traffic controllers can alter that plan if they have to along the way, but they had an approved flight plan that did not go through that area. And then they were told mid-flight to not only alter more to the east, which put them over the conflict zone, but they were also told to descend. So now that would make it look like they were heading towards the war zone and descending. And since they were coming through Russia to a fighter jet, a pilot of a fighter jet who might have been who was from Kiev, they might have said anything that's coming from Russia that looks like it's coming down for a landing that could carry soldiers or mercenaries or whatever from Russia. And so the pilot might have just been given instructions in the fighter jets that were following. We all know that 2 fighter jets were following from Kiev. They were following flight MH-17 over the conflict area. And why would they be following a commercial jetliner that was flying at 37,000 feet in order to descend down to some lower 30,000 feet or just above? So to the fighter jets, it looked like here we have a plane coming from Russia and it's coming down perhaps for a landing, and maybe it's packed full of soldiers. But so the fighter jet might have been told, if you see anything coming from Russia that looks like it's going to land, it might be packed full of soldiers, no matter what kind of plane it is, shoot it down. But Kiev was giving orders to change the flight plan, where the plane flies. It had no business telling the plane to descend to a lower altitude, making it look like it may be coming in for a landing there, and to make it look also like it's flying into the war zone versus flying closer to Italy and just on its way south to Malaysia. And so it's a recipe for disaster. Or the pilot was directly ordered to shoot it down under those circumstances anyway. But in any case, the Russians did put out a satellite view, whether you believe it or not, and I tend to believe it because the Americans haven't put out any information contrary. This plane blowing out of the sky. Now, the other thing is the Russian put out the aerial view of it from a satellite they have of the 2 fighter jets following, and you can see the missile trail from one of the fighter jets going straight to the airplane, so to the plane that crashed. And now the Dutch who are investigating this, are saying that they're not ruling out that it was shot down by an air-to-air missile versus a ground-to-air missile. So I believe it was shot down. Now also the Russians had questioned someone who was working at the field who came forward as a whistleblower and said that the 2 jet fighters that were in the area that took off earlier that day came back, and one of them was missing its air-to-air missiles. And that was unusual, that it would come back without its missiles, obviously unless it would fire them at something. And that the pilot looked visibly shaken up. And this particular fellow then went to Russia. I don't know if he went on his own accord, but he volunteered to whistleblow and said that he had asked the pilot what happened, and the pilot said the plane was in the wrong place at the wrong time. So the Russians, wanting to, not sure if to believe him or not, they put him to a polygraph test, and he passed the polygraph test. Where he had stated that the pilot was visibly shaken when he landed, and said that the plane MH-17 was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And this is the pilot who got out of the fighter jet that was missing the 2 air-to-air missiles that he had earlier taken off with, as witnessed by this guy who was debriefed and given a polygraph test. Now the Dutch are saying that they're not going to rule out an air-to-air missile anymore, and but also they have a treaty pact with Australia, the United States, the Ukraine, with Kiev, not the other side of Ukraine, and themselves, that if any of those 4 parties investigating this tragedy don't like the results of the investigation, that any 4 of them, if they object to the results being published, then it will stay a secret. Now, anytime you have a secret like that, then you know there's something bad going on, and I have to believe that the Americans making up a story like that, and I love this country, but I fear that something bad is happening here. And as a pilot, if something like this happened to me and I were a pilot and I ended up dead along with all of my passengers, I would want the truth to come out. And at this point, I would like to ask President Poroshenko, what did you mean when you said, I have a nasty surprise for you, people of Donetsk and the people of eastern Ukraine who voted to join the Russian government, and the Russian government accepted them, and the Duma voted to accept them, and Putin voted to accept them, and the Crimea. What was the nasty surprise that you were talking about 3 weeks prior to? Every single day you were saying, I have a nasty surprise lined up for you people. And then you never said it after the crash. You shut up about the nasty surprise. So I'm thinking the nasty surprise was the crash of this plane. That means that you either directed the plane to a position where you knew that the people on the ground would shoot it down, or that you, in fact, directed your fighter jets to shoot it down. And I'm thinking fighter jets shot it down. Because why would the plane be ordered to descend over the war zone? Not only fly over the war zone, being directed to alter course to the left, which would be to the east, rather than fly closer to Italy, where it would have been safer, and where all the other air traffic had gone. And then, God forbid, why did you tell it to descend from, say, 37,000 feet down to 32,000 or 33,000 or 30,000 feet, knowing that that would put them even at greater harm's risk of a Buk missile or something fired from the ground? That if you really cared about people, and these people are not involved in the fight, they came from the Dutch land and they were on their way to Malaysia. They were not participants in the war. They were neither Russian nor were they Ukrainian. They were just people passing through, but you and your nasty surprise pushed that aircraft into a bad position, and the pilot followed directions, and it got, I think, blown out of the sky. I think that I'm kind of leaning toward the thing got shot out of the sky, and I'm kind of believing the Russian story that and seeing is believing. I mean, I saw the Russian satellite shot that they took a picture of it being shot down by one of your fighter jets. So what do you have to say? And if you don't believe that story, then tell me what the nasty surprise was supposed to be that you're not talking about anymore. The nasty surprise talk stopped. Who told you to do it? It's on your conscience now that these people died. Any one of your relatives could have been on the plane. Might have been better if you were on the plane. Seriously. What are you going to say when you die? And everybody dies at some point or another. You're going to die of old age, or you'll have a heart attack before you have old age, or someone might assassinate you. Anything can happen to you. I'm not threatening. I'm just saying everybody dies. And then you end up at the gates of heaven, assuming you believe in God in heaven. What are you going to tell? What are you going to tell God when you're knocking on heaven's door, and it's time to explain to God why you did this? Why don't you be a man and just step up and say, I was told to do it by a foreign government that might be bad, and at least offset some of the, unload some of the responsibility for this thing onto, I don't know, maybe us, maybe the U.S., maybe a rogue element within the U.S. set this whole thing up. I don't know. I'm not going to be so fast to blame my country because I love my country. Maybe it was someone from the EU or NATO that's hungry to get their hands on that area because it has gas transiting through. Mr. Biden, why is your son suddenly the attorney for the Ukrainian part of Gazprom? I mean, how did that happen? He somehow just got installed as the attorney for Gazprom, and now we find out, as of a couple days ago, you released a picture of your son. By the way, he's very handsome. His beautiful teeth, I see. He's a handsome fella. But now, in the press release with that handsome picture, we find out not only is he the attorney for the gas company of Ukraine, but he owns a $4 billion, not million, $4 billion stake in this gas company. Now, A, where did he get $4 billion, or who lent it to him? And how is it that he has a $4 billion stake? Why wouldn't that stake be spread amongst the Ukrainian people? And oddly enough, it's, you know, your son. I mean, you're the Vice President of the United States. He obviously had an in to get that position. And there are a lot of unemployed people in the United States. I'm sure there are even more unemployed people in the Ukraine. I think they have lawyers in the Ukraine. Why would they need an American attorney? And how is it that your son became the attorney? And now all of a sudden, not only is he the attorney, but he has a $4 billion stake in the company? I mean, that's an awful big legal bill. I don't know what he did to earn a $4 billion stake. I don't have a job right now. I mean, I could use a $4 billion stake. I'm probably just as smart as your son. Maybe not. I don't know. But I don't think he sold 10,000 insurance policies. He didn't win all these awards. He's not as persuasive as I am as far as being a salesman is concerned. And I think you need a salesman to convince Russia to allow that gas to transit through Ukraine. You need somebody to convince Putin to let that gas transit through Ukraine so that you can let it pass and make your cut, or whatever it is that you're going to do to make your money out of the thing. You need a salesman. And I know you don't have a securities license, unless I'm wrong, but I hold 2 federal securities licenses. NASD, I have a 6 and a 63. And I'm a real estate broker, and I think you're talking about an awful lot of real estate that those pipes are covering. So I know all about real estate. This country's got a lot of real estate problems. I know all about securities. And I know all about the insurance business, and probably need one hell of an insurance policy to cover a gas field. So I think I have credentials good enough that I could run Gazprom. I mean, why not? I run small businesses. All this is a scaled up version of small business. I think it's probably an easier business to run than convincing an insurance company to take the risk of somebody driving in Sanford. Huh, try that. My point is, do you see what's happening, people? You have the haves and the have-nots. These wealthy people that are in our government are there not to be your representatives. They say they're there to be your representatives. They're classified as your representatives, but they're not subject to insider trading law. They don't have to take Obamacare. They have their own special care. They're treated like royalty. They violate the Logan Act. The Senate just violated the Logan Act by going overseas and negotiating these deals. But they're not allowed, only the president can do this, but none of them are being brought up on charges. So you see, these are people that are like royalty above the law. And I'm telling the people of America, now I'm talking to the average American. Do you understand what's happening? Now we're sending forces over there to fight. Blackwater is over there, Academy. They changed the name because they did so many bad things. They had to change the name to avoid lawsuits. Folks, we have got to get the royalty so-called royalty or representatives who really are nothing but royalty, and what I would call at this point, maybe if not truly genetically inbred, but they're friendly enough that they're almost genetically connected. I mean, they're not genetically connected, but they're so connected at the hip by being friends with each other that they all look the other way, and they operate as a gigantic RICO violation. RICO means racketeering, criminal organization. It's one great big racketeering operation to control the Ukraine. And those people want to be free. They want to be left alone. I know I have friends over there. I talk to them. My best friend has a website built by somebody over there in Kiev. And he's saying, look, I'm afraid I'm going to be drafted. I don't want to fight. We just want to be left alone. And the people on the other side, they just want to be left alone. Now, I'm not negotiating anything. I'm not allowed to. I don't want to violate the Logan Act. But I'm just saying, the UN Charter says that these people have a right to self-determination. I just read it. I've got it written right here. I'm not going to read it to you because you can look it up yourself. You all have the internet. But when you see these things happen, like the president of Ukraine saying, I have a nasty surprise lined up for you, and then a whole plane load of AIDS experts, people who are working on the cure to AIDS, getting shot down. I mean, why not shoot down an airline full of ordinary people? No, they shot down an airline of people who were working on the cure to AIDS. You know why? Because it's part of the New World Order. They want to kill off a lot of people on the earth. They don't want AIDS to be cured. They want AIDS to kill everybody so that the population gets lowered. I think the population is too high in the world too, but I don't believe in killing anybody. I think through birth control and family planning and attrition that the world can be brought into a lower population, more sustainable state. But these people literally want to kill you. They want to start wars up because they want to quickly lower the population. And the Russians, the Duma, has granted Vladimir Putin the sole authority to press the red button to launch nuclear weapons against the United States. And he said, look, if you run your tanks across the border, he announced the other day that what his plan was. His plan is, and I'm telling you because you're not going to see this on Fox, I get my information from more serious places and directly from the source. They're not going to fight tank for tank against our Abrams tanks because, frankly, I think the Abrams tank probably wipe out a lot of the Russian tanks. They're such a superior tank. Don't underestimate the Russians. But Lavrov and Putin said we're not going to do that. And not only that, we don't want a lot of our guys getting killed fighting in a battle that's going to end up in, even if we win, that it ends up wiping out thousands or tens of thousands of our troops. We're just going to push the red button. And we're going to throw a tactical nuke your way. We're going to knock out thousands of tanks with one atomic blast. That will start a nuclear war. Then the United States will retaliate, saying, well, the Russians they're using nuclear weapons, and they will blame it on Russia. When it was us, massing at the border and provoking and provoking and provoking and provoking, it started the whole thing. We have no business over there. The Russians, when the wall fell, they pulled out of Germany. They gave back Eastern Germany. They gave the Ukraine back. The Ukraine should be free to decide what they want to do. And they did decide. The people of Eastern Ukraine said they want to go back to Russia. Let them go back. They speak Russian, for God's sake. How's it going to hurt us if they go back to Russia? And what has Russia done to hurt us? Nothing. But they can. Oh, they could ruin your day. You piss them off too much. They're not going to just let us take over the Ukraine. they're not going to let us come through Poland or Estonia, where we've got academia and U.S. troops past and NATO exercises going. The EU is broke, so are we. I'm not saying the Russians are rich, but I'm saying they're ready for a fight, and they have nukes, so you've got mutual assured destruction. And remember what I said, you're talking about if an atomic war were to break out, it's going to damage the Earth. Not only is it going to kill the soldiers involved, but it's going to damage the Earth. The Earth. And we're all going to suffer. Even if the U.S. stays out of it and no nuke flies over here, the Earth will be damaged and the radiation will come around the Earth, just like when Chernobyl blew up. You know, when Chernobyl blew up, we all got a dose of radioactive iodine. And it shortened our lives, damaged our thyroids, gave some of us cancer. And our press simply said, well, it damaged the crops. Damaged the crops of the European Union. In England, they had to throw away a lot of the cheese and the water, and they had to dump the milk from the cows for years. Look, folks, you can't have a war with Russia. You can't win. And if you win, the Earth is going to die, and with it us. So you can't win. It's impossible. It's a stalemate. The best thing to do is what the UN says, the Charter says. Let the people decide. And unless you let the people decide, they're going to fight anyway, and they're going to be warring, and you're going to have a civil war forever. And what would that be for? To lower the population? Yeah, I guess that would help to lower the population. But the population being isn't that great over there. It's greater over here. But right now, the Russians have their submarines, their ballistic missile subs, parked at the North Pole, all around the North Pole. And they can launch these A-10 missiles right over Canada, 10, 20, 30, 50 at a time. And they're going to come out of the sky from the north, right down and drop on us. And that's not counting the subs that are off our East Coast and West Coast, and not counting their air forces. And you don't know where these subs are. All they have to do is surface and fire. That's what their bases are now, but they're going to build hard bases in the North Pole. Right now, while they're building their bases, they're just using a submarine as a base. But like I said, that sub is carrying firepower. You can't blow it up, it's underwater, and you don't know where it is. And only Canada stands between us and those missiles coming out of the sky from the north to blast Washington and Seattle and the United States right off the face of the earth. And and anyone who doesn't get killed in the blast, like I said, the earth will be damaged. The earth will be damaged. For what? And look, until you tell me what happened to Flight 8 MH-17, I don't believe a lot of what I'm hearing. I haven't seen where Russia's done anything wrong. They fly they're flying bombers, heavy bombers now up and down our East Coast. They're allowed to do it. They're just proving to us that they can do it. They're trying to show us that mutual assured destruction can happen. Look, folks, we need to reach some kind of peace plan. And listen, thanks for listening. And by the way, I need you all to donate because we're building the website. And there it is. Please donate what you can so I can get all of my material on the web. We're building a nice website, and all of my videos are going to be on the web. And donate whatever you can, $5, $10. Just do it through PayPal. Log into PayPal, type in benjamincola@aol.com, and donate $5, $10, whatever you can, $100 if you can. Believe me, it will be appreciated. And I'd like to continue these broadcasts, and I will anyway, but please help me. Jeb Bush announced that he wants to run. Clinton wants to run for president. It's the same old people. listen folks, we need to clean house, please. We've got to get some new people in here. Otherwise we're going to all die. We're all going to end up with the same old thing. Do you want the same old thing? Not me. I don't want the same old thing. Give me a chance to show you what I can do and what I know. Donate so that I can get my website up, and I'll show you some cool videos. Even unrelated to politics, I'll show you some videos that are just totally cool, and it'll be worth it. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.